just thought of another question.
Okay. I'm sure at some point we want to do some brainstorming.
Well, I think we're probably going to do this a little bit differently.
Okay.
Because the way you, this is not about a particular, use of whiteboards
Right.
or use of table structures or whatever, like some of the other. I think it's better just to have an open-ended discussion
great.
of this, don't you?
Yes.
Now I forgot my question.
That's okay.
Well,
Well, while your question will transition.
Right, and while you're thinking of your question again, I will say in terms of implementing this, it has been a phased-in process. Not necessarily with this class, but I was also teaching 2304, which is the intro managerial seminar. So a lot of similar students, similar comfort level with the material. And I did very much build it over time. And I started out with the lessons that were more challenging, right? And needed more support structure built in, and then kind of backfilled as I was able to make resources over time. And then to your earlier point, which I don't think I ever addressed about what kind of questions I get. We do get to do more realistic stuff in class. And that was my goal, is being able to carve out more class time to go to the SEC's website and play with real financial statements, not just the neat, pretty ones that are at the end of the chapters, so that they can get a better sense.
Jen, as a chair, I get to see everybody's student evaluations. And I'm not talking about you at all, so I won't make that point.
Okay.
But there are one or two individuals in our department who I believe are good, solid teachers who have flipped their classrooms and their student evaluations took a nosedive.
Mm-hmm.
This may go back a little bit to your point about adjusting your teaching style appropriately. I'm not sure, but I just like to throw that out, maybe get your comment on why that might be. Or is it perhaps because these were early adopters and it was just a lot of disgruntled people because of extra work they had? I don't know, I'm not sure. But since I have to evaluate
Sure.
people's teaching,
Sure.
when the student evaluations take a nosedive and a whole lot of people are really unhappy, and this person's been getting much better evaluations beforehand, I gotta think, what's going on here?
It definitely is more challenging for the students to do it this way, and which kind of seems inconsistent with what I said earlier. We've always wanted to flip our classes and we've always wanted them to prepare ahead of time, right? But it does seem to be a bit more challenging for the students in terms of requiring them to step up their game and actually do the prep. It's much more active prep than it was before. Reading a textbook is fairly passive prep. And so I have a feeling that before, or for other classes, when they're preparing, oh yes, I prepare for my other classes too, I'm reading the textbook, in that my eyes are passing over the words and they're registering in my brain, right? Not that they've really prepared for class. Breaking up stuff in chunks with videos where they're watching it, where they're doing some sort of work and checking their answers, where they're doing a quiz in advance, that requires much more active prep than reading over a page. And students who sort of pass their eyes over a page, if they don't understand, they're kind of comfortable with that because they go, okay, well, I've prepared. But then in class, they'll kind of tell me what I need to know. And so, my eyes pass over, I don't quite understand, but that's okay because they're going to tell me. Well, that doesn't work very well in this arrangement. It does require them to step up their game. And so that's part of the reason why I try and be quite transparent with the students from the front end about the purpose. I have also noticed that it is, and this is anecdotal, that it has been helpful to do this very early in the semester. When I kind of first started, and so it was, we had sort of established a rhythm, and then 4 or 5 weeks into the semester we had a flip day. They didn't quite know what to do with that. So But once I got to the point where it was, okay, no, this is the routine, we're doing this all the time from the second day of class, that also seemed to help, that they got that early signal of, look, this is what it's gonna look like. And the days when I spend more time actually just talking are the unusual ones.
You would think that, I would think that a student today would enjoy preparing for class a lot better in this format, because we've all been, at least I guess we've all been in the place where you start reading a chapter at 11 o'clock at night, and you get almost dizzy in about 15 minutes and you start wandering off. That's not fun,
Right.
but when you're being, and I'll use the word entertained, not in a negative sense,
Right,
but
right.
when you're looking at a video that's short and gets right to the point and gives you a solid example, I would think that would be more enjoyable as far as getting ready for class.
For the students who are serious students. For the
Ones who
students who
do.
don't give a two wits about preparing for class, to me, this sends a very strong signal to a student like that. If you want to do that, then you better get out of here. And have you had some recidivism? Have you had some drops?
Excuse me. Yeah,
What's your
I've
drop
had-
rate now?
it's not been huge. But yeah, I have had some students drop.
I thought of my question.
And that's fine. I mean, that doesn't hurt my feelings. It's, they gotta have fun.
Yeah.
And to some extent, the students who have either dropped or the ones that I have observed, perhaps not as engaged in the active part of class, they're kind of either waiting for me to give the answer, or they're just kind of marking time because they know the solution will be posted after class is over, and so as long as they're physically present, okay, that's all I'm gonna do for today. Otherwise, I'm just gonna kind of sit here and text or whatever. They also don't turn in their homework. They don't complete the quizzes on time, regardless of whether they got them right or not. So I don't know that they would do well anyway in a regular class. They just don't seem to be particularly engaged students, so I don't take a lot of personal blame for them not doing well because of the unusual environment. I'm not convinced that they would have done well in a traditional environment either.
I thought of my question.
Okay.
In my section, on the first exam, I had a bimodal distribution of grades. I had a group of students up here at the top that they knew it. They definitely got it. I had another group of students down here on the bottom that definitely did not get it. So,
Sure.
have you noticed that more of your students get it? In other words, has your grade distribution begun, or maybe you don't have enough experience yet? You've had several quizzes and you haven't had the midterm yet, right? You
Right,
haven't had the
right,
midterm. Do you expect perhaps your grade distribution to come more towards perhaps a little more normal?
Yeah, I anticipate that, kind of like I was saying earlier, I anticipate that high D range
Yeah, will become.
moves up.
will move up.
Okay, and I think part of what helps the most in avoiding sort of a bimodal deal and getting that D range up is that, and it's work I still have to do. I mean, I still need to make sure I get better at it. But in having that series of scaffolded questions, I try very hard to have representative of exam level difficulty questions. It's really easy to have in-class problems and to have homework problems that are still not quite to the level that I want them to be on the test. And it's not, one kind of reasoning is, well, but if that's what differentiates the A student is that they can put it together and it clicks on the test. No, they need an opportunity to practice even at that level. And so I try real hard to make sure they get up to that so that they see, look, if you did this and you tried, and after the first short test that we had, well, I'll give you the second short test because the first one's really easy. It was really early on. After the second short test, when they come, the students who didn't do well, and I say, look, come review this with me. When we go over it, I go, you see this problem? You see the one you had in class? You see how these are very similar?
Yeah.
Right? It's not, you may have thought, where did this come from? No, you had 2 or 3 opportunities to practice at that level of synthesis and comprehension. If you chose not to do it, well, maybe that's why this looks funny. And when, they can be in denial for only so long. When we have that kind of conversation, they're like, oh, well, okay, yeah, I kind of should probably do that more. And so I have observed that when we have this kind of conversations, they do also seem to take a bit more ownership of, oh yeah, I need to do this, not you need to teach me. But then, because of some of these tools, I can also help them a lot more with their homework and stuff, even outside of class. So my perceived availability is pretty high in terms of getting help from me.
And are you helping them then remotely?
Yeah, sure.
Do you get a lot of questions remote that you get to answer remote, let's say from home, or?
I don't get a huge number, but I get them from the students who I suspect would otherwise be low C students. It's that group that feels more comfortable. The top students, they're not asking a lot of questions, but they've already got it. So it's that group, they know I'm available and they're more comfortable. Look, I took a snapshot of my homework, can you help me out with this? They don't have to come see me in person and sit across the desk. They can send it to me and get the help they need, and that's fine. They're, especially sophomores, they're still kind of getting
And
used
you get
to
those at 6 o'clock in the morning after having them posted by the students.
No, I tell them I don't check email after 9:30, so if you can't get it to me, you're not going to get an answer.
Jen Evler was here last year. She's a class assistant at UT, and she's flipped her very large class there. And she said she not only had a decline in student evaluation, so she's struggling with that, but she also pulled up all of her students, but particularly those D students, really pulled them up to the C level. So she said it corrected that problem. She too had that distribution before, a lot of A's and a lot of D's, and it's sort of come together now.
And her evaluations improved, and I was trying to think what she did or what she attributed that to. And we can go back and look. We have that video from last year's seminar on our website somewhere, so we
What's
can.
her subject area?
Classics,
Latin primarily.
Latin.
but large class, so we're talking 100+ classes.
Yeah.
And she actually works in the Teaching and Learning Center also at UT. So it was something that she was sort of studying. And it was interesting, she put up tweets that her students were tweeting about her and these sorts of hate.
Yeah, very personal.
Yeah, very personal
Oh my
kinds of
gosh.
things from that first experience of flipping the class. And so she talked a lot about the turmoils of that, and then
And I did, so I was at the seminar in Excellence in Teaching the other day, and there was a visitor from a different religion department coming in and talking about a way he had set up his class to grade it like a game. It was really neat. But one of the things he said was kind of a throwaway comment, but I really picked up on it because I think it will help me address for the students who are like, she's not really teaching us. Because a lot of this stuff, part of the reason I do my own is because they hear my voice. Okay, so it's me doing it, right? I think that helps. But there's also ways for the apps that I got and with other apps to, and I'm just gonna have to deal with it, have a camera on my face so that they have the little talking head, that they're not really watching me. They're mostly watching what I'm writing and what I'm doing in the whiteboard app, but my face is still there. And so it's kind of like they're in a room watching me teach them, right? And so just psychologically, I think that will help some of them adjust to doing this themselves.
Well, that's also.
And that's part of the lecture capture and.
Yeah, well, I was
stuff.
just say that's a lot of what they're having to face right now in the online MBA. Because if I'm paying for an online MBA, I don't really want just a like a voice. I want
Right.
to feel like there's somebody there teaching me something.
Mhm.
I mean, it's only 360 by 360 pixels,
Right, it's
but
tiny,
it's a face
but it's
that
a
I can
face.
connect.
Right.
It's not this. Well, I could have done this through Khan Academy. This guy
Right.
is actually talking. This lady's actually talking
Right.
to me.
Right, and that's how I'm gonna adapt some of my stuff the next iteration.
But online teaching, which I'm now doing as part of this new program, so it's a whole different thing, but you are still such a facilitator. You're not, I don't view myself as really entirely teaching them. I'm really just leading them through a self-directed course.
Mhm.
And so I'm providing my face and my voice sometimes, but so much of it is self-paced and they're having to do the work. So it's like this,
Mhm.
but it's entirely outside. So at least our face-to-face students have the advantage of getting to work with each other in the
Right.
class and getting to ask the professor questions that they
And-
wouldn't get online.
Yeah, and I do get when we when they have the stuff that they're walking through, I do very frequently get comments from students as I walk around helping them. I'm so glad we're doing this problem in class, because if you had assigned this just for homework and we didn't have, I wouldn't know where to start. You know, the definitional stuff, the concepts, and that I could get on my own. This is so much more helpful to be able to sit down and do this with you and think.
Well, and
through it
that's
in a more
really where the
complex fashion.
teaching
Yeah.
comes in, and,
Right.
and it should be perceived as more one-on-one than you standing up at the front and 101.
Sure.
We would like to give you an opportunity to complete a short evaluation, so that's in your folder. We don't want to shut down the conversation, but do, as we continue to talk for a moment, take time to evaluate this very helpful session. Thank you, Dr. Chevis, very much. Dr.
I want to say this, this is a very courageous form of running a classroom.
It is.
You know, and it takes a lot of trust, and it takes so much work
Mhm.
to do up front.
Mhm. It does get a bit easier over time as I build more of the modules, but so as in terms of lessons learned, okay, if you do start to do this, one of the things, and it didn't occur to me until recently, but to not do those kinds of, to help with the getting more out of your capacity, to not do these kind of tutorials talking about a particular problem number in a particular textbook. Okay, to have a neutral version of it as a handout that you do, because as soon as the textbook version changes, you're going to have different numbers in the problem, and you're going to have different number of the problem within the chapter, and so then you have to go back and recreate it.
Cuts down on the work the second semester.
Right, exactly. So
Yeah,
to-
the worst
to-
Good idea.
The worst idea is like, great job, Bears, this weekend on your victory
Yeah.
against
Right, yeah, you
That'll
try
date
to
you a
remove
little
the
bit.
dates out of
Yeah.
the talking so that you can use them again and again. And then you wind up with a continually building portfolio of stuff that helps rather, and I always get, I ask them what's the muddiest point, how can I make more on target to your particular questions this semester? But as long as I make those new things in a neutral fashion, then next semester, I've already got all of that stuff to address those kinds of questions. And so, next semester, I'm gonna have even more stuff for students to already have to prep.
I have one final question. Do you ever do, remember the old KQS evaluation, keep doing this, quit doing this, stop doing this?
Sure.
Are you self-evaluating as you go through this to
I
sort of
used
experiment?
to do that more. I haven't done it in a while, and I probably need to pick it up as I have it again.
Thank you, Jess.
I can see someone saying, I am so busy, my research, this, that, and the other. I don't have time to completely flip my classroom from here to here, but
Right.
maybe on it.
Right. Right.
Do you think this would work well when somebody says, I've got these 6 difficult points during this semester. I'm going to do this with each one of those. And just have a flip day. And I know you said that when you kind of go, I think, to flip during the semester from one way all the way to the other was such a great idea, but it seems to me like at least it would be useful to start out, at least if you don't want to do the entire thing, by implementing this partially within
Sure.
a class.
Sure, absolutely.
Did you try that initially with?
Oh,
each
sure,
class?
yeah, that's how I started building the portfolio, was picking, okay, here's the 2 or 3 things. I think probably a critical mass would be about 6. But the more important thing, I think, would be to have the first one come pretty early.
Mhm.
Even if it's not a topic where you would think, oh, really, this is a difficult, because early in the semester, usually we don't have really, really difficult topics. They build over time. But picking one anyway, and doing it early enough within the first 2 or 3 weeks of class that it just becomes part of the routine, yeah, I think that'd be perfect.
Yeah, so the gateway for some folks may be trying to pick like a tedious 5 to 8 homework problems that they're just constantly having to rework over and over again. Whether it's done on the iPad, if you have that capability, that's one way of doing it. I hate to say Echo 360 right now because we may be actually flushing Echo 360 as of like January 1. But you've got the ability, we've got the ability to capture through Echo 360 personal capture or through Camtasia. There are ways that you could actually just capture working a homework problem and then making 1 homework, 3 homework, 6 homework problems available. We have that ability right now. And as an example, in accounting, Dave Hurt had a student come through, and there's some accounting that literally on paper ledger accounting, the student went through, and I made her write a script. It needs
Yes.
to be scripted.
That's another important point.
But she spent 7 to 10 days really working through a script on 6, 7 assignments, and they wound up being 3.5 to 6 minutes long. And instead of the video camera at her and PowerPoint content, we took an external video camera and pointed it straight down like a document camera. And so she had the problem on PowerPoint, and she had a video camera facing straight down. So she's explaining, according to this problem, this, and she's handwriting it in the ledger. And they were 6 minutes long. She created 7 of them.
This is a student of his?
He had I don't know if it was
His grad assistant.
senior or grad, I don't remember which. But yeah, they came to me and said, here's what we want to do, how do we make this work? And I said, right now, this is the tool to use. Now that tool's kind of in flux right now, but.
Okay, now, that's another question. Let's say we want to start some modules like this. Suppose I start one on Camtasia and you decide to discontinue
So
Camtasia.
here's the next one. So as a university, we are in the middle of evaluating. In fact, at this point in time yesterday, I was in a meeting. There is a group that is evaluating. Baylor is evaluating a media storage, a media repository, and a media server, such that whether you created it on a phone, a webcam, a flip cam, any type of media, there would be a way to upload it into sort of Baylor's version of the cloud. Because right now, you're relying on ShowMe as the ability to stream. You're relying on this third party. Well, Baylor kind of wants to pull some of that in. So, I literally could hand you a video camera, but then what do? Do you upload it to YouTube? Do you load it to Vimeo? Those are options. But Baylor's evaluating what that looks like right now, because what we would like is whatever file type you uploaded, a true streaming media server can take that file and break it down into MP3 or .mov or MP4 at huge resolutions, at small resolutions. But the media server, that's what it does, and it serves that content. Which means if you link to Baylor's media server on the phone, it's going to stream it to you in a file that's like big. Or if I'm looking at my computer, it's the same thing, but it's actually a file that's big. But it's streaming it as opposed to pointing to a specific file. So we're in the middle of evaluating what does that look like. Because then at that point in time, if you upload it, should the rule be, well, it gets a Baylor watermark? Because if I have the ability to pull that off, who's going to then move that to YouTube? And so there's this huge evaluation process, but we're moving towards Baylor having a media-hosted streaming server, and it's all been cobbled together all over campus, but eventually that needs to come together. One of the keys is, well, we need to be able to index it somehow with keywords. If you're building it and you put these keywords in, well, can I search across your keywords and see so that's part of that evaluation. And there's a lot of people. There's like 20 people in the room with all of there's security involved. Do you need it? Do you need a Baylor credential to look at it? Who's got the rights to make that publicly available? There's a ton going on, but those are the kind of discussions that we're having.
Here's another thing that I can think of. David Hurt has this student who has these capabilities. Suppose I don't, and I'm an instructor who is 60 years old, and I've been teaching the same class forever, and I'd like to do a few of those, but I am completely clueless.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to me like it would be nice if we had some people available who could work with professors to help them accomplish this.
Do you want to raise your hand?
So that if somebody like, let's say Betsy Willis, and I'm not saying she's clueless, but
Sure.
Betsy Willis might say, I'd like to try this with 3 or 4 problems in my class this time, and if it works well, expand that next time. Who can she get to help?
To facilitate the technology, to facilitate making the tools available, absolutely me. As far as the course creation, I can get you married to the tool, but having a peer is really going to help with the construction, or working with you guys is going to help.
Working with us, we can point you to, or point people to other faculty, but also John Solis, I don't know if you've met him. He works at the electronic library, and he could help with that kind of thing too, with
You
the,
see Andy Gamble's?
he works with her.
Yes.
Yeah,
As
as
an
an instructional
independent-
designer,
What's his last name?
Solis,
Solis.
Solis.
John Solis. And his background is STEM education, but
That's
now
fine.
does instructional design.
STEM.
Yeah, that's
Science, technology,
technology,
engineering, and math. Yeah, all instructional
I
design.
think-
He's
I
very
think-
good.
some of this commentary, I think part of, and I know I said earlier, I think it will be helpful for the students to get more of a perception that I'm teaching them, that they hear my voice and see my picture. However, for the faculty who aren't quite sure how to get started, or they want to get started but they don't think they have time to make their own, I think part of what we need to get better at is sharing, I mean, I could put, here's the topics I have these things for, and here's the links. If you want to send them to your students for your topics, go ahead, because that's fine with me.
Yeah, and there's
It's gonna be
there's
my
no
voice, not
reason-
your voice, but
there's no
that's
reason
something
for
that's a
6
place to
people
get, to
keep
make 6 of
recreating
the
the
same
same-
thing,
yeah.
right. We need
Get
to get better
together,
at
talk
sharing,
about it,
right.
and then come to Casey, come to me, and let's talk about how to get you in front of good cameras, good computers, and
That's
we'll get that
critical.
technology together.
We've also talked about creating a Canvas website for you, for the business school, and where people can sort of make a bank of different activities, that sort of thing, if you're interested in that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like an in-house version of Khan Academy, right? Instead of
Yeah.
pointing to there, you point to us, and then it's at least a familiar voice or a local voice rather than some
But
random
the moment-
person.
the
And I
mo-
know we've talked about computations an awful lot for management visitors, but I hopefully there you can start to see some overlaps, some things that would be helpful.
It's at least different,
Yeah.
and so just forcing us to think
Yeah, I think
differently
that's
about
helpful.
what we're doing. I don't think I could flip the class, but I think what we are, I think we both see the same class. We already flipped the class. It just looks different than this. But there may be other things that we could do.
One of the things, and I would love to figure out how to play with this myself, but we haven't several conversation. One of the things that the guy at the religion one talked about was a set of, he posts them to YouTube, but he makes videos of himself, and he does biblical stories. But he went out and bought a green screen from Amazon and a little setup, and so he has a little movie studio in his basement, which might look creepy, but okay. But he has a green screen, and so then he can use iMovie to project, the scenes, pictures from the real places. And so, and I'm thinking, well, hey, maybe I could have like a really giant balance sheet behind me, like the weatherman pointing to stuff. Or for, managerial accounting, I've got or even for financial accounting, part of one of the things that I do is I take pictures at local businesses and put them up on my things, we can draw on them and say, okay, put on your accounting glasses, where is the revenue in this picture? What does it look like? If you go out and look around, where is revenue? Okay, and so, that's something we could do on a deal behind.
At the most extreme and kind of cool end, there exists software, there is definitely some expense, and there would have to be some buy-in, but there exist campuses, colleges, universities, where you literally walk in with a thumb drive, and you walk into a studio and you plug your thumb drive in, and when the computer detects the thumb drive's in, the lights pop up, the camera pops up, and it starts counting down. And you talk, and you do what you do, and it writes it straight to the thumb drive, and you pull it out, and you go. There is no buttons. It's literally a buttonless, or it's a single button. You plug it in, and you hit the button, and it goes. And they have a screen that it's a plain gray background. And if you want to do green screen, it will actually throw green light at the screen, but the screen is like a 3M, like a stop sign, and it just radiates so much green that it becomes a green screen. It's gray or green depending on what light they're throwing at it. But you plug a thumb drive in, you talk, you unplug the thumb drive, and it's that easy. And that's the thing in the new building, that those type of, you could have a room that's dedicated to that. And it would have good microphones, and it could have
Right,
good
and
cameras.
the quality of what you're producing, and that's, for my purposes in class, for a flipped classroom, they know that it's kind of an off-the-cuff kind of a deal, and they're not expecting it to be super high quality, right?
And
It's
they're
nice when it is better
forgiving.
quality, and they're forgiving.
And they're very forgiving.
And they're very forgiving, but for stuff that's actually online
What they
education,
keep telling
you
me
want production,
is
you
that
need production
don't want
value.
production value. They keep saying, these people
That's
that know
what we
what they're
said here last
doing,
week in this
that
room.
That they don't want
We do
production?
not want production
that
value.
the webcam, like you're using your phone camera taking
Want it to
pictures
be
of your
homey.
lectures, that it's better. It's
Well,
more
I think that
like
may be true for some things, but
I'm not
perhaps
sure
not for
I
others.
agree, though.
Especially
Remember that
for
one said
standards.
last week as part of the presentation.
Yeah, no, it's,
Personally,
I'm sure it varies.
I'm too homey.
Well, we should stop.
Yeah.
Thank you all so
Thank
much.
you all for
coming.
Thank you.
For coming, and thanks for your feedback, excellent. Very, very good.
Do you want these? Yes, I'll take them.